Canadian tourism into the U.S. continues to decline, down more than 30% last month compared to 2024.
Vegas isn't the only place frequented by Canadian travelers that has taken a hit. Clint Henderson also told us that other places like upstate New York, Vermont, Michigan, Montana, they've also seen a decline.
Everybody afraid, scared. There's too much politics about immigration too.
Tourism to the U.S. is on the decline. The U.S. is set to lose $12.5 billion because of it.
The firm Tourism Economics predicted an 8% decline in international tourism across the country.
What if I told you that in just 73 hours, the United States lost something more dangerous than money territory, or even allies? It lost relevance. The empire that once defined the world's cultural, economic, and political heartbeat has begun fading into the background, not because of war, not because of natural disaster, but because the rest of the world quietly decided it no longer needs America. On September 6, 2025, the data is undeniable. The United States is on course to lose $12.5 billion this year alone from collapsing tourism, empty airports, and rerouted trade.
Tourism to the U.S. is on the decline. The U.S. is set to lose $12.5 billion because of it.
The fall is no longer theoretical. It is happening in real time. 3 months ago, the shift began almost invisibly. International arrivals that once flooded New York, Los Angeles, and Miami have drained away. Today, there is a teenager in Mumbai who dreams of studying abroad but has already chosen Singapore over Silicon Valley. A Brazilian entrepreneur who once viewed San Francisco as the launchpad for her startup has signed a deal in Lisbon instead. A Nigerian artist with an audience of over 1 billion on social media announced last week that he will stage his first global tour in Europe and East Asia, skipping America entirely. None of them hate the United States. They are simply finding it more convenient, more affordable, and less complicated to build their futures elsewhere. That more than hostility is what makes this decline so terrifying. To test this trend, I searched for flights from London to major destinations. Dubai appeared in 0.3 seconds, Singapore in 0.4. But New York, it was buried on page 2 with a bold warning about visa processing delays. That fraction of a second difference multiplied across millions of travel decisions is the speed of irrelevance. As Professor Elaine Chen from the University of Toronto explained in a recent interview, when convenience becomes a competitive disadvantage, you are already losing the global contest. People don't wait around, they simply go elsewhere. The collapse is not just visible in data. It is lived every day by people like Sarah, a Canadian trucker who for years made weekly runs across the Detroit border. Last month I told my dispatcher, "I'm done," she said. "It's not the gas prices, not the paperwork. It's just that crossing into the U.S. isn't worth the hassle anymore." She is not alone. In the last 30 days, 500,000 cross-border car trips disappeared, devastating small American towns that depended on Canadian shoppers. According to the Detroit Chamber of Commerce, retail spending from Canadian visitors dropped by nearly 62% in August, leaving restaurants and shops half empty. For 80 years, America was the mixing bowl of humanity. Cultures colliding, ideas cross-pollinating, and futures being invented. But that engine of progress is stalling. Canada sees the opening and is seizing it. Montreal is now investing $1.6 billion in a fully electrified carbon-neutral port expansion designed from the ground up to bypass American bottlenecks. This is not just about shipping containers, it is about positioning Canada as a global hub in the 21st century, said Quebec's Finance Minister Charles Imond. While Washington debates subsidies for coal and oil, Canada is building the logistics infrastructure of 2050. The results are immediate. Exports from Canada to China are up 22% this year, to Spain up a staggering 147%, and to the Netherlands 11%. Northern Europe overall has increased Canadian imports by 10%. Meanwhile, American exports in these markets continue to fall, with the U.S. Department of Commerce reporting a 7% decline in the same period. While America is busy building walls, Canada is building bridges, remarked Javier Ortega, a Spanish trade official at a press conference in Madrid. And those bridges are leading everywhere except south of the Canadian border. DP World, one of the world's largest port operators, is in negotiations to run Montreal's new terminal. They already manage operations in 78 countries. Their message is blunt: we are helping Canada build trade routes that do not require the United States. This is not just Canadian companies hiring Canadian workers. This is the global economy actively investing in a world designed to function without America. It is nothing less than a vote of no confidence in U.S. relevance. The decline is not confined to trade. It is showing up in something as personal as a family vacation. Last month, a Minnesota family planning a trip to Europe abandoned their flights out of Chicago after learning about 3-hour security lines and visa complications. Instead, they drove to Toronto and boarded a direct flight to Amsterdam. It saved us 8 hours and a headache, the father explained to a local newspaper. Multiply that choice thousands of times, and you begin to see how the roads are no longer leading to America, they are leading around it. Portland International Airport, once a proud symbol of Pacific trade, has lost 73% of its international traffic. Lufthansa, British Airways, and Scandinavian Airlines didn't just cut routes, they evacuated altogether. Just across the border, Vancouver gained every one of those flights. New York's JFK is down 78%, Los Angeles International down 71%, Miami 64%, Boston 59%. It's like contagion, said aviation analyst Michael Boyd. Once a hub collapses, airlines won't risk coming back. Networks need connectivity, and America's network is breaking apart. The impact on education is perhaps even more damaging. For decades, elite universities like MIT and Harvard guaranteed America's intellectual influence. Today, international student applications are collapsing. According to the Association of International Educators, U.S. enrollment from overseas dropped 38% in 2025, the steepest decline in history. Dormitories once filled with the next generation of global leaders now sit half empty. Dr. Ana Rodriguez, an education consultant in Madrid, put it plainly: the brightest minds no longer see the U.S. as the center of innovation. They see obstacles, not opportunities. Seattle, which billed itself as America's window to the Pacific, has seen Asian passenger traffic collapse by 69%. All Nippon Airways eliminated its Tokyo route in June. Microsoft and Amazon conferences, once the beating heart of global tech networking, are now struggling to attract foreign participants. Innovation thrives on human connection, and when those humans stop showing up, innovation simply moves somewhere else. Canada, Singapore, and Berlin are becoming the new crossroads. Economists warn that the real loss is not tourism or trade, it is the assumption that America matters. For 80 years, every global boardroom discussion included the question, what will America think? Increasingly, that question isn't being asked. Instead, decisions are being shaped in Brussels, Singapore, and Toronto. Even Washington Dulles Airport, the capital's diplomatic hub, is down 65%. Virgin Atlantic, Air France, and Lufthansa have cut service, making it harder for ministers and ambassadors to reach Washington. As German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock remarked last week, diplomacy does not stop without Washington, it simply relocates. Meanwhile, Canada's ports are surging. Grain exports are up 16% after one of the 3 best harvests of the century. China, which once relied heavily on American soybeans, is now buying Canadian wheat in bulk. The Montreal expansion alone is expected to add 1.15 million containers annually by 2029, creating 8,000 new construction and logistics jobs. More importantly, it is creating an entire generation of workers trained to thrive without U.S. markets. We're not just moving goods, said logistics entrepreneur Marie Tremblay, who runs a small trucking company in Quebec. We're moving away from dependency. The pattern is clear. 5 years ago, nearly every major shipping lane ran through New York, Los Angeles, or Miami. Today, the busiest corridors run Montreal, Europe, Vancouver, Asia, Halifax, Africa. America's ports aren't just losing business, they're being erased from the map of relevance. Analysts project that by 2030, U.S. international connectivity could fall below that of Mexico and Turkey. GDP could shrink by 3 to 4% annually, not because of recession, but because of isolation. The cultural impact is equally profound. American entertainment once dominated global screens. Today, Korean dramas, European climate initiatives, and Chinese technology are setting the pace. According to Nielsen, global U.S. share of worldwide streaming content dropped below 40% in 2025, while South Korea surged to 21% and Europe to 18%. The desire to be American is fading, and desire cannot be legislated back into existence. Canada, by contrast, is using its pension funds and sovereign wealth strategically. Quebec's pension fund now holds 45% of DP World Canada, ensuring profits stay inside the country. Charles Amand described it as future-proofing Canadian sovereignty in a post-American world. This is not just about diversifying trade. It is about building a financial architecture that guarantees independence from Washington. The math of decline is brutal. Each lost route makes reopening harder. Each empty terminal normalizes avoidance. Each closed dormitory convinces the next student to go elsewhere. The acceleration is exponential. Year 1 brought small changes. Year 2, noticeable shifts. Year 3, irreversible collapse. And in 2025, we are firmly in Year 3. The warning signs are everywhere. By late summer, over 500,000 Canadian visitors who once filled U.S. border towns disappeared. Business owners in Buffalo, Detroit, and Bellingham are discovering that much of their revenue was not American at all, but international money flowing through America. Remove the flow and the illusion collapses. "We were never serving locals," admitted a restaurant owner near Niagara Falls. "We were serving the world through America. Now the world has simply cut us out." At the same time, 11 new international hubs are rising across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Unlike previous empire transitions that took decades, this one is being accelerated by digital speed. A Brazilian entrepreneur can discover Montreal, compare its advantages, and book her shipments within an hour. Technology has made empire collapse real time. Children reflect the shift most clearly. In Singapore, kids now learn about global trade through Singapore. In Toronto, they learn North American leadership through Toronto. Meanwhile, American students are still taught the gospel of American exceptionalism, a world that no longer exists. As historian Dr. Marcus Lee of Oxford warned, the most dangerous thing is when a society educates its children for a past world while others prepare their children to build the future. The environmental contrast is just as stark. Canada's carbon-neutral port projects electrified cranes and massive solar installations are bets against U.S. energy leadership. Every solar panel installed in Montreal is a vote of no confidence in American dominance. While the U.S. debates climate science, we are engineering climate solutions, said Canada's Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault in a speech last week. The decisive moment came with the 73-hour shift earlier this summer, when global flight patterns permanently redirected away from U.S. hubs after new visa restrictions. In less than 4 days, routes that had connected New York and Los Angeles to the world simply vanished and never returned. America became invisible, not through war or destruction, but through the simplest force of all inconvenience. By September 6, 2025, the world is no longer waiting for America to recover. The invisible exodus is no longer invisible. America has become the country people visit in history, documentaries not on their vacation bucket lists. The shift is digital, accelerated, and relentless. Previous empires faded over centuries. This one is collapsing in front of us. And the scariest part, the world seems relieved. So the real question is not whether America can rebuild its gateways. The real question is whether anyone will care when it tries.
Canola farmers woke up to some tough news this morning. China has slapped Canada canola with an over 75% tariff amid an anti-dumping investigation.
China is taking aim at Canadian canola farmers. Beijing's new tariff on exports of raw canola from Canada at a rate of nearly 76% are now in place.
A $43 billion canola industry, 200,000 jobs in that industry.
And now we're calling on the federal government to take immediate action to help canola growers during this unprecedented situation.
What if I told you that a tariff designed to crush Canada's most valuable crop has backfired so spectacularly that it has turned the tables on Beijing and left China scrambling? On September 6, 2025, Canada stands stronger than ever, proving that a 75.8% tariff meant to strangle its canola farmers has instead ignited one of the greatest comeback stories in modern trade history. What started as a devastating blow has morphed into a rallying cry for farmers, small businesses, and political leaders who refuse to surrender. When China imposed a 75.8% anti-dumping duty on Canadian canola in early 2024, the shock was immediate. The Canadian prairies, responsible for nearly 90% of the nation's canola output, braced for disaster. Canola exports to China had been worth nearly $5 billion in 2024, with some provinces like Saskatchewan sending over 40% of their crop directly to Beijing's crushing plants. For family farmers in places like Regina, Brandon, and Red Deer, the fear was not just about lost revenue, it was about survival. A survey conducted by the Canadian Federation of Agriculture in February 2024 found that 61% of producers expected to face bankruptcy within a year if the Chinese market disappeared. As one farmer from Manitoba put it, when you lose your biggest customer overnight, you don't sleep. You think about the bills, the workers you have to pay, and whether your family will be able to keep the land. At first glance, Beijing's strategy seemed flawless. By targeting Canada's agricultural crown jewel, China intended to force Ottawa into concessions on its electric vehicle tariffs and other geopolitical disputes. Analysts in Beijing believe that by cutting off access to the world's largest consumer market for canola oil and feed, they could cripple Canadian farmers and spark domestic unrest. But that calculation underestimated Canada's resilience. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau declared in a press briefing in Ottawa that same week, Canada will not be bullied into submission. We will support our farmers, we will diversify, and we will turn this challenge into opportunity. The Canadian government wasted no time. Within days, Ottawa unveiled an emergency package of $2.5 billion, including price stabilization programs, reserve funds, and direct financial aid to farmers. Minister of Agriculture Marie-Claude Bibeau reassured producers this is not just about one crop, it is about the backbone of rural Canada. We will not let this sector collapse. The message resonated. Farmers across Saskatchewan and Alberta, many of them running operations passed down through generations, felt that for once, Ottawa was fully backing them in a global fight. But what truly shocked observers was not just the government's support, but the agility of Canada's private sector. Export associations, grain traders, and even small crushing facilities began pivoting aggressively to new markets. Within 1/4 of the tariffs announcement, Canadian canola exports to Europe, Japan, and Southeast Asia surged by 27%. A report from Statistics Canada in early 2025 confirmed that shipments to the European Union alone rose from $780 million in 2023 to $1.3 billion in 2024, largely because of European demand for non-GMO oils. Small and medium enterprises, often overlooked in global trade, played a vital role. In British Columbia, a cooperative of 47 farmers launched a direct-to-Europe canola oil brand marketed on quality and traceability. Their sales tripled in less than 6 months with contracts signed in Germany and France. One of the cooperative's leaders explained the Chinese tariff forced us to stop being bulk suppliers. Now we're bottling our own oil, building our own brand, and getting better margins than ever. In rural Alberta, small family-run crushing facilities also discovered new opportunities. A farmer in Lethbridge reported that his cooperative, which once sold raw seeds to a single Chinese buyer, is now exporting packaged oil to supermarkets in South Korea. He noted that local consumers appreciate the maple leaf on the label, seeing it as a mark of trust and safety. This emotional connection, combined with high-quality standards, has allowed small towns to keep jobs and even create new ones, proving that resilience is not only measured in billions, but also in community pride. The pivot also reached Asia. Japan, already a major buyer of Canadian grains, increased its purchases of canola oil by 21% in 2024, citing its high quality and stable supply. South Korea and Vietnam followed suit. In a survey conducted by the Asia-Pacific Food Importers Association in June 2025, Canadian canola ranked as the most trusted foreign source for cooking oils ahead of both U.S. and Australian competitors. Meanwhile, demand for renewable biofuels in markets like Indonesia and Thailand turned Canadian canola into a sought-after energy crop. Industry analysts now estimate that biofuel contracts alone could add an additional $2 billion annually to Canadian exports by 2026. This diversification reshaped the sector. Instead of relying on a single giant customer like China, Canada is now spreading its risk across more than a dozen nations. Farmers who once depended on one buyer are now selling to many, making the industry more shock-resistant than ever before. The results are striking. Total Canadian canola exports reached $13.2 billion in the first half of 2025, a 19% increase over the same period in 2023, despite China's near-total retreat from the market. The transformation did not stop at market diversification. The tariff shock accelerated Canada's push toward value-added production. No longer content to export raw seeds at razor-thin margins, the industry has begun investing heavily in refining, processing, and innovation. Crushing plants in Alberta and Manitoba expanded capacity to produce high-grade cooking oils, plant-based protein powders, and bio-based industrial compounds. In Regina, a new $350 million processing plant opened in early 2025, creating 600 jobs and producing canola-based protein isolates used in meat alternatives. "We are no longer just selling seeds," said the CEO of one of the companies behind the project. "We are selling solutions for food health and energy security." The global reception was immediate. Multinational food corporations like Nestlé and Unilever began incorporating Canadian canola protein into their product lines. Renewable energy companies in Europe started signing contracts for Canadian biofuel feedstocks, seeing them as a reliable alternative to palm oil. Even U.S. buyers, once sidelined, increased purchases after realizing that Canadian refined canola oil offered higher quality and stable prices compared to South American suppliers. What was once seen as a crop vulnerable to political games has now become a strategic asset. China, meanwhile, is paying the price for its gamble. By cutting itself off from Canadian supply, Beijing forced its processors to seek alternative sources in countries like Russia and Ukraine. But those alternatives proved unreliable and more expensive. According to China's Ministry of Commerce, domestic cooking oil prices rose by 18% in the first half of 2025, contributing to food inflation already running above 6%. Biofuel producers in Guangdong and Shandong provinces complained of shortages and higher costs, forcing several projects to delay production. An executive from a Chinese food company admitted anonymously to the South China Morning Post, "We underestimated how difficult it would be to replace Canada. The scale and quality simply don't exist elsewhere." For Canada, the irony is sweet. What was supposed to be a crippling blow has instead become a global showcase of resilience. Politicians across the spectrum have capitalized on the narrative. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre praised farmers as the frontline soldiers of economic sovereignty. Prime Minister Trudeau described the turnaround as a textbook case of how Canada can lead by turning pressure into progress. Even local mayors in small prairie towns celebrated new jobs and processing plants springing up as a result of the crisis. Small businesses also found opportunity. In Calgary, a family-owned refinery that once sold only bulk oil to China shifted to producing specialty organic canola oil marketed to Europe. Within a year, they reported a 40% increase in profits. In Saskatchewan, a group of young entrepreneurs launched a startup producing canola-based biodegradable plastics, securing investment from European green funds. As one of the founders put it, "If China wanted to stop us, they ended up pushing us into industries they cannot control." Numbers back the optimism. Data from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada shows that while exports to China collapsed from $4.9 billion in 2024 to just $380 million in 2025, exports to other countries surged by more than $5.6 billion, more than offsetting the loss. The net result, Canada's canola sector is on track to hit a record $16 billion in total revenue in 2025. That is not survival, it is growth. Analysts now argue that China's move may go down as one of the greatest miscalculations in modern trade history. A report by RBC Capital Markets in August 2025 concluded that Beijing's tariff strategy has inadvertently accelerated Canada's global integration. It increased its processing capacity and made its canola sector more competitive than ever before. Even the World Trade Organization noted in a recent update that Canada's ability to diversify markets so quickly is a rare and instructive example of resilience in global agriculture. The lesson is clear. Tariffs and protectionism may cause temporary pain, but they cannot suppress a sector built on innovation, diversification, and global demand. By weaponizing tariffs, China hoped to weaken Canada. Instead, it strengthened it. As of today, September 6, 2025, Canadian canola is no longer just a commodity. It is a strategic global product tied to food security, renewable energy, and health industries. Canada has emerged not weaker, but stronger, and the shockwaves are being felt from Beijing to Brussels. In the end, the story of the 75.8% tariff is not about defeat, but about transformation. It is proof that when pushed into a corner, Canada can fight back not with retaliation alone, but with creativity and resilience. Farmers who once feared for their livelihoods are now standing at the center of a booming industry. Small businesses that once depended on a single buyer are now global players. And Canada itself has shown that it can turn crisis into opportunity, turning a tariff war into a stunning win.